Good morning, Warriors. Welcome to Morning Adrenaline. Today is Wednesday, February 4th, 2026. And as always, it is time to wake up the warrior. Hey, let's start today with a question. Have you ever ran at full speed, completely locked in rhythm, operating at your absolute best, and then suddenly everything slowed down? And it wasn't because you were tired or finished. You just hit something. A distraction. Maybe it was a wall, a moment where momentum broke. And instead of stopping to figure out why it happened, you just accepted the slowdown. Or worse, you might have labeled it as failure. But reality says you don't fail simply because you stopped running, but because something threw you off. And so the distinction matters because most people aren't quitting. They're losing their grip on positioning they worked hard to gain. So I want to start out by using an analogy and challenge how people think about the hamster wheel. Now, most of you hear hamster wheel and immediately think it's a bad thing. You think of things like redundancy, boring, running hard but going nowhere. It's associated with being stuck, with wasted effort, with a life that feels repetitive and uninspiring. And on the surface, that interpretation makes sense. You're moving, you're exerting energy, but it doesn't look or feel like forward progress. So let's slow this down for a second. For the hamster, the wheel isn't pointless. It's exercise. It's conditioning. It's how the hamster stays capable. There's actually a positive outcome for the hamster, even if it doesn't look impressive to you. Now, let's bring this back to real life. Most high-performing human activities look exactly like the hamster wheel. Systems, processes, time management, daily routines, structure. None of it's exciting. None of it's sexy. None of it gets applause, and all of it feels completely mundane. But it's the precise foundation for overachievement. See, nobody compounds results without repetition, and nobody builds momentum without boring consistency. So let's make a critical assumption today. The hamster wheel isn't necessarily the problem. Because if repetition produces strength and structure produces clarity and discipline produces results, then the wheel is doing its job. So the real question becomes, if the wheel isn't the problem, what is? So today's episode I am calling Stay on the Wheel. So let's explore that last question again. If the wheel, the hamster wheel, isn't the problem, then what is? The problem isn't repetition, but it is disengagement from the process. It's running important aspects of your life on autopilot. It's staying busy while mentally checking out. It's losing awareness of pace, position, and focus. The wheel itself doesn't fail you. You stop relating to it intentionally. And the moment your attention drifts, pace becomes unstable. And that's where you fall off. Not because you're incapable, not because you stopped dominating your position, but staying on the wheel isn't about excitement. It's about acceptance of the process and faith that leads to an outcome. See, you have to monitor yourself. It's about making small corrections early, staying mentally engaged in what you've already committed to. That's the difference between people who compound progress and people who are constantly starting the process over. The wheel rewards awareness and it punishes neglect. And once you understand that, staying on becomes a standard, not a struggle. So here's the question of the day. Where in your life did you convince yourself the wheel was the problem when the real issue was that you stopped paying attention to staying on it? Think about that carefully, because abandoning structure often feels like freedom in the moment, But what it usually costs you is your pace. And ultimately, the big prize that you seek. And understand, losing pace doesn't always unravel quickly. It just quietly erodes over time until one day you realize you're no longer where you thought you were headed in life. So far, we know this much. Falling off the wheel isn't good. The real question is, why does it happen? So there are four main realities that cause it. And I'm going to go through them right now. So let's jump in. Reality number one, you fall off because of distraction. Folks, distraction isn't accidental. It's an undisciplined mind that loses attention quickly. You didn't lose your ability. You didn't suddenly become incapable. You lost focus. And focus is rarely taken from you. You make a subconscious decision to give it away. So let me slow this down again and make it personal. You might want to write this question down and answer it now, later. Give yourself a day, go through your mind and answer this question. What distracts you? And I'm not talking about in theory, in your actual life. Who distracts you? What people distract you? Do you have conversations that just go nowhere? How about drama that isn't yours that you decide to help carry? Or it could be things. It could be your phone. It could be notifications or endless inputs that fracture your thinking. Or what about activities? Busy work that feel productive but produces nothing. Motion without direction. Pleasure, comfort, entertainment. Exciting dopamine rushes that cost you your pace and your momentum. See, distraction doesn't usually show up or at least start as chaos. It shows up as your permission. You give yourself permission to look, to scroll, to engage, to delay. And every time you do, your pace drops. Think about this. What you watch steals your pace. And it's not because watching is bad, but because attention is finite. And high value people understand this. They protect their attention like an asset because it is. They don't flirt with distraction and hope for discipline to save them. They don't trust willpower in environments designed to break it. They design their life to support focus. Now, here's the part that you don't want to skip. You don't regain focus by trying harder. You regain focus by removing access to distractions, by eliminating inputs that don't serve your direction, by tightening boundaries around your time, by being honest about what and who consistently knocks you off of your rhythm. And if you're thinking, okay, but how do I do that quickly and permanently? You're in the right place. I'm going to tell you how shortly. Because distraction isn't just a habit problem, it's an identity problem. And we're going to handle it at the root, not at the surface level. Here's reality number two. You fall off the wheel because you lost pace. Pace is allowed through structure, and pace is revealed through physical activity. You can lie to yourself mentally for a long time. You can rationalize. You can intellectualize, but your body doesn't lie. Everybody knows if you're moving with pace through your actions. So here's how it can be revealed. Your sleep drifts. Your nutrition gets sloppy. Training becomes inconsistent. Movements drop off. See, you didn't necessarily burn out, but you did stop managing your energy. And most people think they fell off because life got busy, but that's rarely the truth. They fell off because their mental and physical conditioning slipped. And poor conditioning makes everything harder. When your body isn't conditioned, your mind loses clarity. Focus shortens. Discipline feels heavier than it should. See, you know yourself. You're not weak. In these moments, you're just underprepared. So this is why fitness matters beyond appearance. Training builds your rhythm. Sleep restores your capacity. Nutrition stabilizes your output. And when those go, your pace collapses. Write this down. You don't rise to intensity, you fall to your level of conditioning. The wheel doesn't reward how hard you can sprint. It rewards how steady and consistent your movements are. Intensity is temporary. Pace is sustainable. You can't outwork poor recovery. You can't outfocus a depleted system. And when your pace is gone, falling off doesn't look dramatic. You just can't keep up anymore. And the fix is not motivation. It's returning to the fundamentals that got you in the right place to begin with. You sleep with intention. You eat with purpose. You train consistently. You move daily. You're in action. Because when pace is restored, staying on the wheel stops feeling forced and starts feeling natural to you again. Here's reality number 3. You fall off the wheel because you got bored. Boredom, folks, is a luxury emotion. It only shows up when your basic needs are met and your life is stable enough to start craving stimulation. I say this all the time. Nothing good comes from boredom. Boredom doesn't necessarily mean something's wrong, by the way. You can be bored and have things working, but that thing you're bored with is just entertaining. It's not entertainment for you anymore. And that's where people tend to misread the signal. Identity level growth is repetitive by design. The process doesn't change. The reps don't change. The standards don't change. Only the outcome does. Now listen clearly. Boring done daily beats exciting done rarely. People fall off here because they start looking for feeling instead of function. They want novelty, stimulation, reward without the rhythm, the flow. But here's the reality. The reward at the end, the money, the recognition, the respect, that's the glamour. For the hamster, the wheel doesn't look impressive, but the conditioning keeps it alive longer, stronger, and far more capable than it was without it. So here's the reframe for you. The glory isn't in the applause. It's in becoming the person who can handle it. And when I say it, I'm talking about the process, not the glamour, not the rewards. That's why you have to fall in love with the process itself, not emotionally, but intentionally. You don't wait to feel inspired. You decide that repetition is necessary for achievement. Because the moment you abandon the process for simple excitement, you trade long-term dominance for short-term comfort. And the problem is comfort never builds anything worth keeping. The people who stay on the wheel aren't less bored than you. They're just more committed than those that fell off. They understand that the process is where identity is forged inside of them, and the outcome is just the receipt. Here's reality number 4. You fall off the wheel because you thought you deserved a break. Now, admittedly, this one sounds reasonable, and it actually sounds responsible. I've been working hard. I've earned some rest. I deserve a break. And sometimes that's absolutely true. Nobody wants to take your vacations away from you. They matter. Long weekends matter. Getting enough sleep matters. Your family time with your loved ones, your kids, your spouse matters. That's just simply called balance. But that's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about deserving a break before the standard has been met. This isn't rest. It's entitlement without cause. Breaks without structure become exits. Because when rest isn't planned, it turns into drift. Recovery is intentional. Rest is scheduled. Escapes are impulsive. And impulsive breaks almost always shows up at the worst moment, right before momentum starts to compound. Guys, you don't earn rest by quitting early. You earn rest by completing what you committed to. See, rest is a reward, not a rescue. Now, here's the real danger. When you tell yourself you deserve a break too soon, you start negotiating with your standards. And once standards, personal standards, become negotiable, identity follows and also becomes negotiable. You stop being someone who finishes. You become someone who steps away right before things get hard enough to matter. And once your identity slips, it's very hard to regain without having the right system to do it. See, high-value people don't avoid rest. They just govern it. They have control and domain over it. They decide when to slow down before emotion makes the decision for them. They set goals on when to slow down after they have personal achievements. Because the wheel doesn't demand endless effort. It demands honesty and consistency. And the moment you confuse balance with entitlement, you don't just step off the wheel, you start to justify it internally. And justification is how people stay off for longer than they had planned to. So this brings us, this conversation, to this point. The wheel isn't punishment, it's progress. Distraction pulls you off. Lost pace makes you slip. Boredom tempts you to abandon it. Entitlement convinces you to step away too early. And just to be clear, none of these mean you're broken. They mean you stopped owning your position. Staying on the wheel, guys, isn't about motivation at all. It's about your identity. Who you are when nothing is exciting, who you are when nobody is watching, who you are when repetition tests your standards. This is where progress compounds. Now, let's solve this for real. For real, for real. So, we've clearly identified the problem. People don't fall off the wheel because they're incapable. They fall off because of 4 things: distraction, lost pace, boredom, entitlement. Different problems require different internal solutions. And this is where most systems fail. Everybody tries to fix identity with motivation. It never works because motivation is temporary at best. You don't need more hype. You don't need the right internal shifts. So let's walk through how this actually gets solved step by step. Distraction is best solved by a method called identity shifting. Distraction is more than a lack of discipline. It's an identity challenge. At a subconscious level, you're operating from a story that said, I'm unfocused, I get distracted easily, that's just how my brain works. And when that identity is running in the background, focus will always feel optional or maybe forced. Identity shift breaks that pattern at the root. It dismantles the internal identity telling you you're unfocused and reinstalls your natural ability to focus. You stop asking, why can't I focus? And you start operating from, focused is who I am. Then when identity changes, clarity, focus, and attention stabilize automatically. See, that's not willpower or discipline, that's alignment, and alignment removes friction permanently. Now, lost pace is best solved by using the belief shifting method. So examples: poor sleep, sloppy nutrition, inconsistent training. That wasn't necessarily laziness. It wasn't necessarily a discipline problem, although it could be, but it was likely a belief level friction. At a subconscious level, many people are running beliefs like, I'm just not disciplined with food. I've never been consistent. I could never look like that. That's not my body type. And those beliefs quietly cap effort. See, belief shifting dismantles those internal limits, those internal limiting beliefs, and it rewires how you relate to effort, recovery, and conditioning. It replaces limitation with possibility. You stop seeing health as something you should do and start seeing it as something that supports who you're becoming. When belief changes, behavior follows it naturally. Training stops feeling like punishment. Nutrition stops feeling restrictive. Recovery stops feeling optional. Your body is going to follow what your beliefs, your personal beliefs, allow for. And when your beliefs shift, habits stop feeling heavy. Your pace returns, not because you're forcing it, but because your internal ceiling has been removed. So let's talk about boredom. Boredom is best solved using the problem shifting method. See, boredom wasn't actually the problem. Meaning was. What most people call boredom, it is actually mental clutter. Unresolved thoughts, low-level resistance, internal friction that shows up during repetition. And problem shifting is designed to clear all of that clutter. It reframes repetition from punishment to proof. You stop asking, why does this feel boring? And start recognizing this is exactly where growth is happening. See, your repetition now becomes your confirmation, not confinement. And you stop chasing stimulation. You stop negotiating with the process. And here's the important part. Problem shifting doesn't take months. In many cases, it can clear daily mental resistance that's been haunting you for years in as little as 15 minutes, and often the results are permanent. See, that's when people stop quitting mid-process, like they do with therapy, where they've been going to a therapist for years for the same issue, because the internal friction that made them want to escape is no longer there. It doesn't exist. Now, entitlement is also solved best by using the problem shifting method. Entitlement wasn't rest. It was distorted reward timing. And mental clutter shows up here too. Thoughts like, I've done enough. I deserve a break. I'll come back to this later. Problem shifting corrects this at the root. It restores clarity around standards. So now you stop asking, what do I deserve? And you start asking, what's required of me next? That shift alone changes behavior. Rest becomes intentional again. Balance becomes structured. Standards stop being negotiable. The internal negotiation disappears. And when that mental noise is gone, you don't have to argue yourself back onto the wheel. You stay on it because nothing inside you is trying to pull you off anymore. So this is exactly why Sisu Vita was built. It's not for motivation. I'm not trying to motivate you or inspire you or hype you, because that doesn't work. But for identity shifting, belief shifting, and problem shifting, and 3 other powerful methods that we apply deliberately. And here's how we do it. We created clear roadmaps to eliminate these 4 challenges and more than 50 additional internal challenges that people struggle with, from focus to discipline to health to execution to follow through, just to name a few, to spirituality, having more faith, if that's important to you. And we do it with permanent change and transformation, not Band-Aids. And it's all available to you for less than the cost of a gym membership. Because listen, the goal isn't to hype you up. The goal is to make staying on the wheel automatic. So here's the question I want you to carry with you today. Are you trying to escape the wheel, or are you finally ready to master staying on it? Because the wheel isn't what holds people back. It's what reveals who's willing to stay present long enough to become someone different. Listen, if you're watching on the live stream, I put the website, a coupon code. Like I said, Sisu Vita, less than the cost of a gym membership to do everything we just talked about. Work your body, feed your mind, build your soul, wake up the warrior. I will see you guys.
Stuck in your mind, fighting shadows of a story.